All right, so just very recently I got back from a 10-day backcountry trip where we were shooting in a pretty remote part of Montana, and we were in the backcountry for an extended period of time, starting at base camp at about 6:30 a.m. and not getting back until often past 8 or 9 o'clock. And while I was out there, I was thinking about what videos I could make that would help you guys out as you guys pursue your backcountry adventures. And I decided that I really want to do a video talking about the fundamentals of layering. I've watched a ton of these videos myself, but I feel like a lot of the time they get way too into different materials and stuff, and I'm not going to do any of that today. This is going to be a no-nonsense, the philosophy of layering. Let's get into it. All right, welcome back guys. My name is Nathan Sayer. I'm a professional backcountry skier, photographer, and filmmaker. I shoot for a wide variety of outdoors brands, and because of that, I've spent an extensive amount of time in the backcountry, whether that is multi-day tours in winter or just sitting in the snow for hours on end in a crow's nest waiting to get a very specific shot. And as part of that, I've really kind of had to master the philosophy of layering in order to stay warm. I suffer from a lot of different frostbite from earlier in my career, and so ever since then, it's been a continued mission of mine to keep my body protected, stay warm, and be able to spend more time in the backcountry comfortably. And because of that, I've developed a very, very simple system that I use to categorize my layers and make sure that I have everything I need to stay warm throughout the day. All right, getting right into it, the way that I want to structure this video is I want to start off by going through all the different layers that I own and bring, and then in the second half of the video, I'm going to go through specific combinations of layers that I actually bring out on tours to show you how they get used and how I swap my layers throughout the day to meet a variety of different needs, whether that is climbing where I'm extremely hot or sitting in a snowbank for a couple hours waiting to get a shot. Let's get into it. Starting off with the most basics, the real key is your base layers. Now, there's a lot of names thrown out around there, and I'm not getting into that in this video. But when I'm on the road for an extended period of time, I am always wearing leggings no matter what. They just help with everything. They keep you warm, they breathe super nice, and they should honestly never come off other than to change. I bring quite a few of those. For the top half, I'm not super picky, but avoiding cotton is a little bit important. I feel like it kind of gets blown out of proportion in a lot of gear videos because it's something that they can be so hard and fast about. Avoid cotton, avoid cotton, avoid cotton. But the truth is that as long as you're staying dry at the end of the day, you'll be pretty fine. I wear a synthetic 32-degree heat shirt because they're at Costco and they're really cheap. I also wear old pennies from high school sports because they're synthetic and they breathe really nicely. It does not matter that much, but one note is that personally, I prefer short sleeves, and this is going to lend towards the versatility aspect of my layering. If I want to get really, really cooled down, I want to be able to lose moisture and heat as fast as possible, and having my base layer being short sleeve is a big part of that. Even in negative 20-degree temperatures, I'm almost always wearing a short sleeve shirt as my base layer. Now that we've covered base layers, I'm going to be moving into warmth layers. Now I have two different types of warmth layers, and one of those is my breathable and the other is my non-breathable. Starting with my breathable warmth layers, probably the most important piece of gear in my entire kit is my fleece. I own several of these from Columbia, Mountain Hardware. I think we have a couple North Face ones. Doesn't matter the brand, get a good fleece. These will keep you warm while you're working, and they will wick moisture far better than your puffies will, allowing you to stay dry and warm on the uphill or while climbing or working. This is one of the most important layers because it's one of the few layers that does an excellent job of keeping me extremely warm without collecting moisture in my inner layers. On the lower half for my warmth layer, I almost never layer anything other than leggings with a shell or leggings with work pants. But if things are extremely cold and I know that I'm not going to be exerting any energy that's going to be warming me up, I do own a pair of moisture wicking 32-degree heat sweatpants. Once again, from Costco, super cheap, all right? I'm just going with budget stuff because it does not need to be fancy. As long as it does not retain moisture and it keeps you warm, it's doing its job. Moving into the non-breathable warmth layers, this one is super simple. It's puffies all the way. Puffies are, in my opinion, one of the most impressive pieces of outdoor gear and something that I could preach about all day long. However, I think they're widely misunderstood by a lot of the people who I see owning one. And the big thing about them is that they just do not wick moisture. These things do not breathe. They do make some that have mesh built into them, but a puffy is never going to wick away that moisture as well as a fleece. And because of that, you're gonna be building a lot of moisture in your base layers and you're gonna end up cold, and that puts you in a dangerous situation later on when you're in your tour and you cannot get that cold moisture away from your body. I personally own 2 puffies. I don't think that that is necessary at all. But one of mine is an ultra lightweight. It fits into essentially the cup holder on the side of my backcountry bag, and it can go with me anywhere. And the second one's a little heavier and more durable for days where I don't need to cut down on weight or space. The lightweight one is just too expensive for me to take everywhere, and so I just don't do that. And the very last kind of classification of gear within my hierarchy is going to be my outer layers. And that includes your upper shell, lower shell for skiing, and then if you're not skiing or you're just hiking and stuff, using a waterproof or a semi-waterproof base shell for your lowers. These are not super complicated, guys. I own a lot of shells from a lot of different companies and they really don't make any difference to me. I think the biggest thing that I would say is get one with pit zips or chest zips or some way to vent, because when you need to wear a shell while working, it is incredibly important that you have some way to vent that moisture. All of my shells have pit zips. A couple of them have either like full length zips or even chest zips, and that allows me to like get a lot of that moisture out. Let's say I'm touring in the snow or something and I want to have the shell on, but I also don't want to be collecting moisture inside. Same with the lowers. I would say the absolute best out there are probably the fly-low bibs for skiers. I've only gotten to try them. They're too expensive for me to own a pair, but they have so many vents and zippers, it's crazy. These ones are really, really cheap and they just have some mesh side zips and they work just fine. Don't overcomplicate it, just get something that's waterproof, take care of it, re-waterproof it every couple years, and make sure that you like it. At the end of the day, that's all that really matters. So with that, those are kind of the different elements of gear that I own. And now I want to get into how I actually combine them to get through an especially cold or hostile day. So now getting into the actual use case for this layering system. The outfit that I'm wearing right now is the outfit that I would start almost any tour in. If you're in the backcountry scene or the hiking scene enough, you're gonna hear the saying, be bold, start cold. People love spouting that, and I'm not a big fan of it because it doesn't really capture, I think, the core essence of what it's going after. The term that I really prefer is comfortably cold. And that's kind of a state that you need to find out for yourself, but it's the state at which your body is cooled, but you are not cold, and you are able to continuously maintain a body temperature that is slightly below the point at which you are sweating profusely. And this is usually that kit for me, whether it's an alpine start in the dark or starting on a Montana tour where it's -10. This is usually a cold setup for me, but once I get moving, I start warming up very quickly. I'll usually start with my gloves on, but I'll almost always end up touring or hiking with my gloves off. And I like to have a little pocket where I can easily stash those so that they are out of the way. Speaking of gloves, I'm gonna go over a bunch of the peripherals like this hat, the gloves, buff, helmet, socks, all of that very last, but let's get into how I would then adapt this fit throughout the day to meet different requirements. So once again, this right here is my climbing kit. I'm wearing my leggings, I'm wearing my shell, my pit zips and vents are all open. I'm wearing my base layer and I'm wearing a breathable fleece up top. Now, worth noting, while this is genuinely my go-to kit, it needs to always be adaptable. And that could be anything from swapping out the hat for a beanie, tossing on a buff, or if I'm really cold, then my go-to is to toss on my jacket. Now, I don't normally recommend ever touring in a puffy simply because you're gonna be collecting too much moisture and reducing the effectiveness of your puffy later on. So say it's snowing or say I'm especially cold while touring, I'll toss on my jacket with it fully unzipped and the pit zips open. That's gonna keep me just warmer, but it's still gonna allow me to wick a lot of that moisture in the way that a puffy would not. All right, now let's say I've gotten to the top of my line or I'm at the summit and I need to start layering up in preparation for the downhill. My go-to in that situation would be to then pull out my puffy, which I have packed, and toss that on over my basic fleece. And sometimes I don't even need this. Sometimes it's gonna be just a fleece and a jacket. Sometimes it's gonna be fleece puffy jacket. It's really gonna be dependent on the situation that you're in. I really like to stay as light as possible so you can kind of see the full spectrum. It starts with just my fleece, then it goes to my fleece and jacket, and then it goes to my fleece puffy and jacket, and that's the full spectrum, and that usually covers me under any range of temperatures. So let's get fully layered up, and I will jump into some of the peripherals, and then we are done for the day. All right, so getting into peripherals. Now, everybody has different gear that they use for this, and so this one's gonna be the most specific to me. But I wanna start off with gloves because I have a lot of frostbite in my hands, and so I have tried out a lot of different glove solutions, and this is the one that I've landed on. Now, I actually, despite having frostbite, really prefer to both ski and tour without gloves on, but obviously most of the time that's not the best solution. So what I like to start with is a very thin liner type glove that's extremely breathable, soft fabric, and this one even has touchscreen sensitivity so that I don't have to pull my hands out in the cold, because the difference between this and barehanded is pretty significant when it gets below zero. After that, I have a slightly heavier touring-based glove that I use. Actually, I think our entire team uses these. The leather makes them extremely durable. They are not at all waterproof, but they get the job done and they wick moisture extremely effectively. For the most part, on almost any mission, this will be the heaviest glove that I'll wear at any point in the day, and I'll try to keep my internal body temperature heated, and I'll use my hands as a way to wick moisture and heat, and so I'll try to stick with a light glove. But in case these gloves get soaked or I'm out long enough that I get extremely cold, every single member of our team carries what we call rescue gloves or recovery gloves in their backpacks. These are my recovery gloves. These are the ones that I use. My girlfriend made them for me, and so they have drawings all over them, which is awesome. And they almost never actually come out of my bag, but I would never leave without these. And here's why. If my hands are getting extremely cold, I always know that I have one extremely warm and still dry pair of mittens left to recover my hands if they're getting towards frostbite or soaking wet or really struggling. And so there's been a lot of tours where my hands have been nearing their breaking point, and I've just pulled these out and immediately been as warm as I need to be. Yeah. These are what we call in the industry recovery mittens. You put them on when your hands get really, really cold. Unfortunately, they make some things really hard. There we go. All right, I'm gonna start making my way out. You may notice that these have leashes on. These are aftermarket attachments onto a relatively cheap pair of Kinko mittens. I highly recommend the leashes because it makes it way easier to work with your SAT device phone or whatever you need to in the backcountry while just letting these dangle around, and you can swing them around a bunch, which in my opinion is a huge win. Getting into hats, I carry two generally. One is this fulcrum flat cap. I like it because it folds flat. That's pretty much all. I have a lot of different hats, but none of them go as flat as the flat cap, so that's what I carry. Say it is a little bit colder though, and even if I'm not actually gonna wear it, I always bring a beanie. The biggest reason I bring this is because when it's not on my head, it's a bag, and I usually put my sunglasses in it. And the sunglasses have to go with you everywhere, and that's just because snow blindness is a real thing. So beanie always goes with me regardless, and it acts as a nice secondary hat should my primary hat get too cold. Now, I really probably don't need to touch upon this, but if you're looking at this guide for skiing, you need to bring a helmet. There are very few circumstances in which it is safe to ski without a helmet. We do a lot of our meadow skiing and longer backcountry tours without them, but we only do that when we know that there's going to be no solid obstacles in the area that we are operating in. The last time that I did not bring a helmet, I was in an avalanche, and it was a safe zone to ski outside of that, but it significantly increased the chances of fatality, the fact that I was not wearing a helmet. So bring your helmet, get a good pair of goggles, buff, learn how to strap them to the outside of your bag, take it everywhere. If you are a wimp about the weight, get a lightweight helmet, but no matter what, carry a helmet. For your feet, this one's super simple. Get the best compression socks that you can. There's a whole bunch of different brands out there. I've been using this pair of Lebens this season, and I like them. They're not my favorites. There's a couple I've tried. Smart Wool's another one that's really popular. Compression socks, not wool, something thin that wicks moisture and fits your foot really well to avoid blisters is all. There's really not much to it. You could look up a 2-hour guide on socks, but just get something simple that works. All right, and so with that, that's pretty much everything I have to cover, guys. It's a super simple system. I highly encourage you to learn the mechanics of the layering system instead of focusing on specific brands and materials. Because when you're out there, you need to have a system that works for you, that you can adapt extremely quickly to changing situations in order to stay warm and preserve as much energy and heat as possible. This is a system that I've developed over almost 20 years of skiing now, and quite a few years of professional backcountry skiing and professional backcountry shooting. It is something that I have found to be extremely compact, versatile, it fits in any of my bags, and it works when I need it to work, and that's the most important thing. And so I hope you guys learned something today. If you did, don't forget to like, subscribe, all the stupid goodies. I'm not really a YouTuber, but I'm trying to kind of figure it out, make it work. If you like what we do all sorts of stuff on backcountry shooting, whether it's vlogs, edits, crash reels, highlight reels, all the way to backcountry safety, doing analysis of the avalanches that we've triggered, been in, and how to prevent avalanches on your own, that sort of stuff. So go check it out. Thanks for watching, guys.